Hello, everybody. This is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and this is going to be my review for Ascendance of a Bookworm Season 2, Episodes 1, 2, and 3. Episode 3 is in the new style, while Episodes 1 and 2 were recorded before I started the new style. So if it looks weird or it looks different, then that's why. Anyway, this is where mine has started her duties as a blue-robed priestess, and obviously, she knows next to nothing about, the goings on in the church because she's never been to the church until her baptism. And even then, she's a commoner, so she wouldn't have known about all this until now, of course. But now that she is a blue robed priestess, she has to have retainers. The head priest gives up one of his, the high priest does too, and they end up giving them, I guess, the worst behaved of all the orphans. And so she now has, Franz, Delia, I think is what her name is, and Gil. Once the head priest and high priest or everybody else leaves and she starts talking to them, we find out that Delia is only doing the high priest's retainer so she can someday become his concubine. Ugh, no. That is disgusting. Now, if it was the head priest, I could kind of understand that. But no, that guy's an old man. I doubt he's got anything left in the chamber, if you know what I mean. Well, he probably technically still does, but they probably ain't. They probably ain't good ones. Though, then again, I don't know if... I'm assuming concubines are used to make babies? I think that's what the main purpose of them are in this world. So if that's the case, I don't know why she's trying for the high priest, because like I said, I think he's firing blanks at this point. But yeah, Gil seems like a troublemaker, and Franz is the head priest's retainer, and he still obviously has a lot to learn about mine, because later on, when they're heading to not only the library, but to meet with the head priest, he ends up walking way too fast for her to keep up, and it wears her out, essentially. And later on, she ends up walking to Benno's place with Lutz in her blue robes, which catches a lot of attention. Benno obviously scolds her for this because blue robe priests and priestesses normally ride around in carriages, and her walking around like that draws way more attention than it should. So, a lot of stuff actually happens in these 3 episodes, so I'm trying to remember everything. Shoot. They decide to let her keep her studio because that would get more donations to the church from her studio, and essentially the high priest is just a big fat douche. And I so wish he would go die in a hole, essentially, for how he treats mine and how he treats, well, everybody, to be completely honest. But the head priest seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and seems to have mine's best interests at heart in this, because he's trying to help her learn her way through the ins and outs of being a blue-robed priestess in the church among other nobles, because that is a literal minefield in itself, dealing with nobility, especially since they know she's not of nobility herself. Dang it. One of the nobles ends up calling her some kind of derogatory name. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head or what it means. But it's later on in the show. And yeah, some of these nobility, I just want to smack them so much for how they treat people. Because I doubt they would like it if they were on the other end of this, if they were essentially the ones being treated that way. Anyway, we find out that apparently whatever mine ends up eating, what she has left over, goes to her retainers, and what's left over of that goes to the orphanage as the alms of the gods. That could be a decent amount, or it could be very little at all. And we actually find out about this late in episode 3, I think. Shoot. Anyway, Gil shows up the next day and almost ends up hurting mine, but Liz thankfully stops him, of course. And we find out that, this information, and mine ends up apologizing to Gil for that because it was her fault that Gil hadn't gotten anything to eat at all. And the reason he became her retainer in the first place is because he thought he might be able to get some decent food, because all he had been eating were the alms of the gods, and we obviously know that the alms of the gods could be next to nothing. So she ends up treating them to some good food later, but not until after she actually gets the orphanage director's office, which Gail cleans very, very well to where it being spotless. And she gives him thanks and says she's proud of him, and that appears to be all the encouragement that he needs, essentially, because he breaks down crying because of that. And obviously they get to eat their fill with the food, and the high priest isn't happy that the head priest went behind his back and gave her the orphanage director's office. Obviously, Delia did not know this. If I'm getting the name wrong, let me know. Because she wasn't with them. She just left at the start of the day because she felt she wasn't needed. Or she didn't want to be. I guess want to be around Mai. Because of this, she got kicked out of the dang high priest area. And she goes and gives Mai a piece of her mind after this. And actually, I forgot to mention this, but Franz ends up becoming a better... He is able to help her better because he ends up learning better how to help her because she's sickly, so he has to keep an eye on her. Thankfully, Benno told him all this during their meeting with the head priest. Later, we find out that apparently she's wanting to start an Italian restaurant, and when did that pop up? Because that was not shown in the anime at all. Maybe that was in the light novel. But, yeah, apparently they're trying to start an Italian restaurant, and I guess she found an oven in the director's office, and they make pizza, and I'm assuming some kind of vegetable soup. And, obviously, it's a big hit, and they bring the rest of it to the orphanage. Gil goes with mine, or brings her with him, which is probably a good idea, because... when they see what had happened to the girls part of the orphanage, it was a nightmare. The girls were barely alive in there. I'm surprised that they were all alive at this point. And apparently that's the whole point that Delia was trying to become the high priest's concubine, is because then she would be needed and wouldn't be discarded back to the orphanage. And we find this out from her because she got angry at Gil for taking mine down there to see that. Obviously, mine's not going to take this lying down. But as for what happens next, if I crossed over into episode 4, I apologize. But yeah, the orphanage was a hellhole for the kids. Anyway, I'll get to work on uploading this, and I'll see you guys next time.